Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be showing you how I paint a summer beach. It's a Cornish scene. It's Sennen Beach near Land's End, and I'm using Saunders Waterford cold pressed paper, quarter imperial size, 140 pound weight, and I'm going to draw a line across where I want my horizon, and I'm going to use this art tape. I can't quite remember the name of it, but I will put what it is in the description below. I'm going to put this across my horizon line because I want to make sure that my horizon line is really straight for this. Making sure the tape is well stuck down across the edge, then I should get a nice clean horizon. Got a nice strong coffee, so I'm good to go. I've wet the sky area, just the sky all over, and now I'm using a large Chinese hake brush to brush quite a thick mixture of cerulean blue across the top of the sky. I'm now going to use a small Ron Ranson Pro Art hake brush to put in a little bit of raw sienna, just to add a faint sunny glow to the sky and the clouds. And then back to the cerulean blue, going to strengthen it up a bit more across the top and bring it down across the bottom, keeping it nice and smooth. A little bit more across the top as gravity is pulling the paint downwards, and therefore it's getting a little bit more diluted towards the top. I'm just going to use a clean damp brush just to take off the bead of water that's run down and rested on the top of the tape, and I'm going to wipe off any paint from the tape with a tissue to make sure I don't get any runbacks back into the sky. Now I'm using a clean damp 1-inch flat brush, and I'm going to take out some clouds. I've got a piece of kitchen towel or tissue in my hand, and I'm scrubbing out paint, lifting it with the brush and then cleaning the brush off in the tissue, and then going back again and carrying on, and then cleaning the brush out again. It's important to do this because as you lift paint out of the clouds, you're picking blue paint up on the brush. And if you don't clean your brush off between passes, then you'll end up putting the paint back in to the sky again, and it could end up looking quite muddy. And I want some fairly nice sort of fluffy mare's tail type clouds, I think, if I can, across the sky. I'm just using a little bit of paint that's on the brush just to flick out and give some smaller clouds nearer to the horizon. Then going back in with a very clean brush, hardly any moisture on it at all, and just carrying on lifting out the clouds. Just wipe across the tape with a tissue just to make sure that there's no moisture on there at all. And now I'm just going to carefully remove the tape and hope that I've got a nice clean horizon line. And yes, that looks more or less exactly how I wanted it to look. Now the sky has to dry completely. It's totally dry now, so now I'm going to draw in just lightly, pencil in where I'm going to have my steep rocky headland leading down to the beach. And then I'm just going to roughly mark in where the sweep of the beach is going to be and where my tide line will be too. Next I'm using a nice rich mixture of cerulean blue, and I'm going to use the 3/4 inch flat brush, I think it is, or a 1-inch flat brush, and just draw it across the horizon line. I want it fairly even across there. and then bring it down, breaking the line up, making them more random as I come down closer, leaving white gaps for the indication of waves and sea foam, etc. Now for the beach, I'm using again a rich mixture of raw sienna and a small hake brush. I'm just going to sweep it across the area that I want to be mostly sandy. Around the bottom corners and the headland it's all going to be quite rocky, but I want this nice yellow sandy area in the centre. Just putting it in quite randomly so that I end up with that sort of texture too, and bringing some of the sand up into that headland. I'm going to continue to build up colour in the headland and the beach. There's some raw umber going in, and now I'm going to go in with Payne's grey, burnt umber, burnt sienna in various amounts, quite thick and rich, and build up some very strong tones all around the base of the headland and the beach on both corners. I want this area to look like it's in shadow from the cliffs that are out of sight, and that will draw attention to the sunny beach, the sea and the sky, hopefully. I also want to create rocks with the card, etching them out with the card, so I'm using very rich thick paint because that's the most effective way to build up the paint in order to etch out with the corner of a plastic store card, or you could use a palette knife or a pen knife, anything like that really. Plenty of nice dark paint in that corner because I don't want that corner to draw too much attention. As I say, the bottom corners are part of the framing device of the focal point of the beach, the water and the sky. Next, I'm taking a piece that I've cut from a store card, and I'm using the rounded corner and the sharp corners alternately to drag across the thick paint and try and create the look of boulders, stones, rocks and pebbles of different types, different shapes and different sizes all in together. Just trying to build up the shape of the beach how I want it to look. What happens when you do this is you push the paint aside and it leaves a paler mark where you've scraped it away, and that's then surrounded by the darker paint, which gives the indication of shadows and suggests the form and the shape of rocks and boulders. And I'm going back in now with a brush and dark paint to add more shadows underneath where I've scraped out and to emphasise the headlands a little bit more. Backwards and forwards now really between the brush and the card. This is where I'm trying to balance up the picture. And now I'm going to put a little bit of grass, a suggestion of grass at the top of that headland there. Just so as the grassy top, cliff top sort of runs into the rocks and the sand and the stones. I'm just suggesting it really. Making sure there's enough shadows in there too to tie it in with the beach and the rocks. Just going to pull the card through the damp sand just to add a bit more texture, a little bit more life and form. just an indication of maybe seaweed, rocks, things like that. It's nearly there now, I think. Yeah, I think I'm quite happy with that at the moment. Just a little bit of work to do on the water. My flat brush is clean and damp, and I'm carefully going to drag it through the dry paint and lift out a fine white line. So they kind of add some sort of lines of maybe sea spray in the distant water. If you want this to look even stronger, you could dab it with a tissue. And now I'm just going to drag the brush backwards and forwards, just using the tips, just to add some more texture. Now with some fairly weak pale grey, I'm just going to add some shadows in the water, just to kind of add a bit more sort of three-dimensionality to it, to the water as it comes, as the waves lap into the beach. Now the last few touches, I've just drawn in these two little islands, this little group of islands just off into the sea, off Sennen Beach. And now I'm going to use a sort of brownish bluish mixture, and I'm going to carefully paint those in. Quite distinctive landmark that you can see from Sennen Beach. I'm using a small Chinese calligraphy brush for this because it's got a nice point. Right, that'll do, I think. And one last touch, I'm going to soft mask the sea and the sky, which means laying a piece of paper across it, and I'm just going to spatter some dark greyish brown spots across the beach just to add a last little bit of texture across the sand. And I think that's it. I think that's about finished now. I think it's time to remove the tape. When you remove masking tape, pull it away from the painting just in case it was to tear. Sometimes tape will tear, but if you're pulling the tape away from the painting, you won't tear the painting itself. I always like seeing the painting with a nice clean white border like this. I don't ever pre-stretch my paper. I find that with masking tape, that once the painting dries, it completely flattens out anyway. Well, here's the finished painting, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And thanks so much to my patrons for your support. Without you, this channel wouldn't be possible. So if you like what you see, and if you'd like to support me on Patreon, please follow the link below. All the materials, etc. should be listed in the description below too. Thanks so much. I'll see you again soon, and take care then. Bye.